back into the Sefer. I thought it was worthwhile. Because today was Parshas Tazria Metzora. It's all about Lashon Hara and so on, you know. So I wanted to mention, I think, a couple of ideas, which I thought was really very appropriate. The first thing we see that is a thing called tzaras. Whatever that was, you know, was obviously it couldn't have been a true disease because the one who was looking at it was a kohen. He should have been a doctor, you know. Obviously, it doesn't require doctors looking at this, you know. So you have to say it wasn't a reifer, it was a kohen. And in any case, the whole concept of tzaras or negoim has disappeared. I think the Rambam says because with a much lower madrega, that type of disease was always negeya, only negeya really to people on a much higher madrega. Anyway, but the question is, even then, you know, what's the concept that it would hit your house first? And then if you didn't straighten your act, it would then hit your clothing. And then if you didn't straighten your out, it would hit your skin.
It's getting closer and closer.
Okay, yeah, I was getting closer and closer, you know. So the question is really, you know, what does that mean? How can a house have a disease? That's the question, you know. And if it didn't go away, you'd have to destroy the entire house, which is astounding. You know, today you just cut out that part of the wall and you put a new wall in, and it's like, you know, what do you mean the whole house has to go? And so on, you know. In any case, so that's problematic, you know. Also, there's a pasuk, I think it's in Mishlei, where it says, "Shomer piv u'shoinoi," he who guards his mouth and his tongue from speaking lashon hara. Shomer mitzoras nafshoi, also guards himself from the tzora, from troubles of the soul. You know, that's what it says. So the question then is, it should say shomer piv u'shoinoi, somebody who guards his tongue and his mouth. Shomer soas gufoi. Or rather, actually, I have to put this that, so they learn how to articulate soras, and let soras nafshoy. Do not read that it means soras nafshoy, which means the troubles of his soul, but soras nafshoy, the goyim, you know, whatever that tzaras, it's not leprosy, it's a mistake that people make, and so on. But tzaras, whatever that spiritual disease which was called tzaras, he will guard that tzaras min nafshe, from his soul. But it really should say tzaras gufay, because that's where it manifests itself. You know what I'm saying? So what does that mean? So what I'd like to say is something which is really very different. And when the Russian created the Bria, he introduced a concept called pirud, separation. Separateness, separation. But in truth, the Bria is really one. There's a certain unity or identicality of the Bria, but we don't perceive that really. Look, even if you take, there are many things that are really one, except they look like this too. For instance, you know, the Jewish people, well, everybody's different, hundreds of thousands, millions of Jews. But the truth is, according to the Pneumius, all the neshamas are really one. It's really one. So in essence, all of us are really one being, one entity. Except it looks like there's a diversity or pluralism of entities and separation.
It feels like it also.
What was that?
It's not just, it looks like it feels like it also.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not going to go too much into that, but there's a concept where you see Klal Yisrael is one entity. There's an achdus, and I mean literally one entity. And without just going really into it, but what the Russian did is he took the neshama. The neshama is really the flip side of the Shekhinah. It's like a coin. You have heads, you have tails, right? The same concept. Really, what the neshama is, Knesset Israel, is the flip side of the Shekhinah. That's why we're a chelik l'kayim imal. We are part of God, whatever that means, you know, and so on. So what the Russian then did is he took the neshama and he split it into hundreds of thousands of parts. And in each part he invested or put in consciousness. So really, but the relationship that we really have with each other is still, it's only one neshama. Except it looks like we're all separate. It's an interesting concept. It's a tremendous pneumius. It's really, in many ways, a tremendous yisoid that really climbs with this guf echad, or I should say neshama echad, that it's really one entity. Except it looks like everybody's separate.
Just like branches?
Yeah, maybe. But like branches, which is really part of one entity, you could use that as an analogy, and so on. But it's probably even more mystical than that. In other words, what separates the neshama? It's probably different consciousnesses. In other words, if you introduce two consciousnesses in one thing, each one will look at each other thinking that they're really separate.
Siamese twins.
Oh, very good, excellent.
Where's that?
So, Siamese twins. So I once asked, okay, for every spiritual state going on that the Rebbe created, there's always a physical representation. And if you know that. And therefore, through that physical representation, you can figure out the spiritual idea. And so on. There are a lot of different, like for instance, there's two universes. There's the world of Kiddusha, and there's the world of Tumah. What's the physical analog to that? Matter and antimatter. Without, and that's why there's right, left, plus, minus, because there's really two different types of wheels, and so on. There's a lot of stuff you can say about that, and so on, But the main idea is what's the physical counterpart, representation of the fact that Klal Yisrael is really one? And the answer is Siamese twins. It's interesting. Siamese twin is really one. Depending on how much they share organs. It's one body, two heads. You see. And therefore, are they one or two? Well, doctors try to separate them, right? But sometimes you cannot separate them because they share a heart. Maybe today you could do that because today, you give hearts, whatever, and so on, But certainly most of the mankind's history, you were born Siamese. You had somebody to lug around with you for the rest of your life. Whatever, But, so the concept of a Siamese twin is really very bizarre. Anyway, you don't mind sitting here. Thank you. I'll explain later why. So the concept of a Siamese twin, in many ways, is a representation, where it's one being, one physical entity, but two different heads, two different consciousnesses. Of course, that presents a lot of funny kind of ideas, But imagine if one side, one person, let's call him A and B, right? A wants to commit suicide because he's depressed. So B says to A, you kind of crazy? When are you killing yourself? So A will say, well, what's it to you? If I kill myself, what's your problem? So B's going to say, well, if you kill yourself, I die also, because we're all goof. There's a tremendous truth in that. That's why Kol Yisrael are ravens there. If somebody in Alaska does a chet, we suffer because it's one goof. There's a tremendous amount of ideas that come out of this.
Doesn't every yochid have that in them?
What?
Doesn't every single individual have that in them?
What in that?
That Tevurah battle?
No, yeah, but I'm not. Yeah, well, no, I'm not talking about Tevurah. I'm talking about the concept of one physical entity. In any case, so Siamese twin is that representation. That it's really one goof, even though it's two beings. So there's a separateness at the same time that there's an achdus. Important idea. You see that also in many other places. For instance, it says "V'dovak ish b'ishtoi," and a man will cling to his wife. V'hoy l'bosa echad, and they will be as one flesh. Now, that figurative was that literal? It's basically figurative, but v'hoy l'bosa echad is really literal. Why? Because a man and his wife is really one set of spheres. There are 10 spheres. There are 10 forces that the Baruch Hashem use. And each human is once, I don't know the whole thing, but each person in himself, okay, a male really has 9 of them, and when he marries a woman, she has the 10th called Malchus. And when they get married, that joins his 9 with 10, and they become as one. And that one set of spheres, 10, a group of 10, right? That's a unit. So really it's literal, not figurative. So what do we see? We see there's a lot of things really that what? That look like they're two, but they're really one. Okay. The question is bilus, ownership. When you own something, what is the relationship between you and that which you own? Well, we say it's a legal relationship. It's a legal state. Ownership is a legal state. Okay? You're not connected to the object in any way. It's not you. You're not connected, right? So what's the relationship? And the answer is legal, right? It's a legal state. It's a fiction. It's a convention that society has decided that there's such a thing called ownership or private property, and there are repercussions. When I say legal, what's the major concept of being legal?
Enforcement?
Enforceable, correct, exactly. When you say something is legal, it means it's enforceable in a court of law. So ownership is enforceable. It means you cannot in any way interfere. You can't steal my stuff. You can't deny me the ability to use it. You can't destroy it, and so on. So the concept of ownership is a legal state that's enforceable. Okay. But really, if you really think about it, the concept... Oh, you have to move that. That's a door.
It's a mikveh.
The concept of ownership really is not legal. It's ontological. Ontological means it's being. You see, it says that man is a mini model of the Bria. You know, that's a famous idea, that each human being is an exact model of all creation. But really, when you think about it, creation is an extension of man, of the neshama. The truth is, the only thing that exists is the neshama. There is nothing else, really. There's God, and then the neshama. What about everything else? Right? What about everything else? There's trillions upon trillions of different things in the universe. Galaxies, stars, and bookcases, and so on, you know? So what are you going to tell me? How could you say that man, only God, the neshama, and God exists? And the answer to that is very interesting. Truth is that there is only two things in the Bria. The neshama and the Rosham. What about everything else? Everything else is really a mystical extension of you. You don't see that. It's almost like, you know, you have an arm, you look at your hand, right? And you say, well, it's separate from me, right? I'm looking at it. But really, it's an extension. You see what I'm saying? The truth is, it's a very profound truth, that the whole Bria is an extension of an Odom. Literally. Except you don't see the extension. Just like we do not see the extension that all Klal Yisrael is an identicality. Right? We don't see that. You know, everybody's sitting there, you know, and so on and so forth. And if you fight with another guy, it's certainly not part of you. But the truth is, he is. Okay? The truth is, the universe is an extension of the neshama. We are the universe, or the universe is us. You see, except we don't see it. That's why, if you do the right thing and you masakin yourself, you masakin the Bria with you. It's not that, well, you know, it's like if I eat nutritiously, guess what? My hand will have energy. You see. Why? Because my hand is part of me. Understand that? It's something to think about. You see. So the universe is really part of man. Or the neshama in some way can radiate and create or actually extend itself or expand, and it becomes a universe. We don't see that now. But someday we will. That really the universe and man is inseparable. Because really in the end there's only two creations. There's God and the neshama. And everything else is an expansion. Therefore, bilus or ownership is what? You own the object because the object is an extension of you. It's a being connection. It's
So
called
can you transfer
ontological.
it?
What? Wait. Right? It's an extension and so on of the person himself.
The person buys a car, his car is an extension of him.
Well, again, we look, if you decide to take a trip to Alaska, you're in Alaska and I'm here, how could you be the same as me? This is the mystery of what it means to be really one, yet it's all period. It all looks like period. I mean, all the questions you ask are valid. How do I sell a car if I'm selling myself? But the truth is, the other guy is really me. So I'm really giving it over to me, except I look different because that guy's consciousness is different. Obviously, there's a whole set of rules that comes into play. Yeah, I realize, after a while, wait, what's going on here?
What if the other guy's not Jewish?
So-
And Jews and Goyim are totally
Because
different halakim.
Because really, what are Goyim really? What are they? Goyim are really part of you. It's only one neshama. Every Goy has a nefesh, a ruchnistic nefesh, or else they couldn't get Elam Haba. Because the Moshe allowed them to keep the nefesh. And it says that in the end of time, every Jew is going to have 10 Goyim serving him. Where did these 10 Goyim come from? But they're really part of you. But they don't realize that, you see. It's the old story of the individual that's period doesn't realize it's part of you. So in essence, they're destroying their own church. But each person, from your nefesh, you actually give rise to a set of goyim. That's really part of you. That's why in the future world, if a goy is zeichet to Ilm Haba, right? What happens? That the whatever you're experiencing, whatever they're experiencing as a result of the fact that they're zeichet, must go through you. Why? You need to be the conduit. Why? Because they're an appendage of you. That's really what they are. Someday they'll wake up and find out. That's why v'nivruchu b'chok kol mishparos u'adama. All the world will be blessed for you. That's what the Moshe says, Avram Avinu. So, at face value, it means you are the source of the blessing. And after a while, it'll dribble over to them. You know what I'm saying? No. It's because all the Umas Ha'olam, even the nefesh of a goy, right, is also part of the nefesh itself. But the Jew has all 5 parts, called the nefesh, the ruach, the neshama, the chayim, yechida, because the nefesh is divided into 5 parts. But a goy only has one thing called the nefesh. He doesn't have the other 4. But even that concept is really that it's allied really to a Jew. So therefore every Jew has a whole slew of goyim that are really connected to him. Of course, we don't know all the rules of this. I'm talking about a reality that's so strange, it's like if I talk to you, I'm really talking to myself.
It makes sense. In aesthetics, you see that. How did the whole world agree that certain colors go together nicely? How do they all agree that a certain car is more beautiful than, where does the standard come from?
Yeah.
But yet we share it collectively.
Yeah.
Even though we may not have all been schooled, this is attractive, that's not, that matches, that doesn't.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
kind of an evidence.
Well, aesthetics means it's where everything blends, harmonious and so on. But that's a very important idea. So in the end, there's only 2 things really created, even though it looks like there are infinite amount of things created, and so on.
Even one thing
Because
created.
all things emanate.
Just
from the
just the
neshama.
shama.
What?
One thing created, not 2.
Who?
What second thing created?
No, there's 2 Shlom.
Oh, you mean there are 2 beings, not 2 creations?
Well, there are 2 beings that were created. Even the Shekhinah is a Nivra, is a created idea.
It's the guy
So
who
that's all there is. What?
The guy when Avram took the mission, took everything, the guy lost they got severed from the source and attached to Avram.
Yes, exactly. In other words, they lost their own independent period, so to speak, and they became attached, literally,
Through the Ruach.
as an appendage, no longer as an independent equal. They lost the equality of period, you see, and they became a inferior aspect of being.
They only have a ruach or a nefesh.
They just have a nefesh.
That's it.
Their whole
That's
tikkun
it.
comes like
Wow.
Avram Avinu.
What?
Their whole tikkun comes like David Yidden.
They have no ability to masakin, because they don't have the other 4.
But
They
when-
can
when
masak
we
the
do the
Bria.
right thing and the Bria gets better, they automatically get better.
Yes, also, yes, yeah. They cannot affect the spiritual worlds because they don't have the conduits. They don't have the connections. We do, you see. the only way they can perfect is themselves, but they cannot perfect the Bria, because really they're an appendage of you. You can perfect the Bria, because the Bria is an extension of you, so you can perfect it. The Bria is not an extension of them, they are an extension of you. So, they can't go beyond you. A branch can't do anything more. It's the tree, the trunk, and the root that does everything. The branch is a makabel. You see. Anyway, it's a whole different perspective of reality. Yes, you gotta pinch yourself and say, huh? But anyway, it's a different perspective of what's really out there. And it answers a lot of questions, by the way. You don't realize that. One of the most perplexing questions in physics is called the anthropic principle. Is that the whole universe looks like it's designed because it knows that man is going to be created. And therefore it has to be designed in a certain way where it can be understood. What? What does the galaxy, 4 billion light years away have to do with me? But it does. And scientists realize that. One of the incredible phenomenon is that, if I have to say it correctly, based on the anthropic principle, light, I forgot exactly what it was, but light knows that there's going to be a mankind. So the light will go a certain way so it can be observed. In fact, everything in the universe knows about everything else.
So that's refuting the possibility of life on other planets?
No. I'm not even talk about that. There's a certain concept called Bell's theorem. Bell's, there was a guy, Bell, and he came up with an incredible experiment that nobody really has an answer for. But this is really the answer. Einstein said that light cannot go, nothing can go faster than light. It's 186,000 miles a second, approximately 300 meters a second, 300,000 meters a second. Okay, fine. 200 meters? What am I talking about? 300,000 kilometers.
186,000
miles.
287.61 miles per second.
Thanks. 300,000 kilometers per second. Okay, whatever. That's pretty fast. That's 7 times around the world in 1 second. That's why when you make a phone call, it's instant. Because that message, that light can go around the world 7 times in a second. Just whatever. Now, what he did is he split, let's say, an electron or whatever, or there was a pair of electrons. And what they did is through magnets and so on, they had an electron speeding off in one direction, let's say west, and the electron goes, it was a photon actually. Photon is a particle of light, whatever. It was going off in one direction, 186,000 miles a second. It's incredible. That means in 1 second, it's 186,000 miles, right? Okay, and then they had another photon, which was paired with that, going off in this direction, the opposite direction, at 186,000 miles a second. It's unbelievable, right? Okay, so in 1 second, they're already 2 times 186,000 miles a second, right? Which is, 2, 4, it's almost 400,000 miles.
372,000 miles.
Good, okay, right away. Now, so what they did is that as the photon or electron actually went one way, there was a magnet. So in a split second, the magnet took the electron and turned it over, because electrons have spin. They have spin. And you can, with a magnet, you can flip it with a magnet, the north side, south side, whatever, right? So they flipped one. Instantaneously, the other flipped also.
Wow.
Now, the question is, wait a minute. This is information. One side flipped, 186,000 miles a second, right? It flipped. How did the other side know? Because nothing travels faster than light. So that information, what?
Nothing could have gotten the message.
Yeah, how did it know that the other guy, the other electron flipped?
Oh, it was instantly at the same time.
It was instantaneously. They have atomic clocks that can measure. It's just incredible what they. And this experiment was repeated many times. I remember it was repeated just 2002 or something like that in Europe, where they sent over again they did the same thing, same results. So it comes out that one electron knew about the flip of the other electron, instantaneously. Now, Einstein called it, what do you call it? Spookiness at a distance. Spooky. Nobody understands that because nothing can go faster than the speed of light. So then how does one electron know that the other electron flipped? But it knows. And that's the concept called entanglement. If two things are in some type of relationship, two electrons in a field, whatever, then both know the existence of each other, no matter how far. In other words, if you are at the other end of the universe, and there's an electron here, let's assume that billions of years ago they were together, light from the stars travels. I mean, the Earth isn't billions of years, but whatever, the distance certainly is billions of years, and so on, right? And the electrons move. That electron at the other end of the universe will know, we're talking about a distance of 13.7 billion light years. And a light year is 6 trillion miles. You do the math. That means one electron will know that the other end of the universe, that electron flipped. That's impossible. That's called anthropic. Somehow, and since everything was together at the Big Bang, the universe started as a Big Bang, I'm sure you heard about the theory, as a singular dot. Infinite means the entire matter in the universe was into this one dot, and then it exploded. It was just beyond belief. Nobody can understand what that means, right? That means, theoretically, every particle in the universe has been entangled. That means the universe knows everything about itself, no matter how far it is. So the question is, excuse me, it's impossible. Nobody has an answer for that, and so on. And they proved it so many different times. It's beyond belief. I don't want to get into a whole physics business, but the truth is, if you understand that the universe is an extension of the neshama, so the universe is really us, and we are the universe. So of course everybody knows what, the entity itself knows exactly what it's all about, every aspect, of the entity itself. In other words, what we're seeing here is clearly one electron is really not split. It looks like it's split. But if we know that the one electron is really the same thing as the other electron, that there is no real period, it looks like period, then of course if one flips, the other will flip too. You see, but this is a proven physical phenomenon. This is not magic. We're not talking about Alice in Wonderland type of scenarios, This is true physics. And this is not the only time. And there are many other questions which clearly indicate, that there's an unbelievable achdus in the Bria. And nobody really understands what that means. How could that be? But if you read up on that in the anthropic principle and so on, it's a famous principle in physics.
They shared a photon, these two electrons?
No, photon is a different particle.
So these two electrons,
yeah, they just split
they
it.
came from a similar...
So they were
other
entangled.
electrons didn't flip also?
No,
Just those two?
just two, because they were entangled. Whatever that means physically and so on, Whatever it means, and anyways, there are things in the universe that nobody understands, It's like an electron really doesn't exist, really. In potential it does. But if you look at it, there it is, it exists. Then that's part of quantum physics, quantum mechanics. Nothing exists until you look at it. That means it needs man's vision to bring it to reality. This is quantum mechanics. They really hold this. That electron doesn't exist. There's no such thing as a little thing going around an atom, really. It's something potentially going around an atom. What you need to do is to look at it, and then it exists. Which, of course, that makes no sense, but yet this is a proven phenomenon. Anyway, I don't get involved, it's a lot of stuff, It's really a whole shiur in itself, how that can be explained. I have a whole explanation for all of this. But anyway, I'm just offering, and it's really interesting, what's the interface between Kabbalah and physics? It's really very interesting and so on. But anyway, this is not the shiur for that.
Stephen Hawking uses all this to disprove belief in Hashem.
Well, that's his problem. I'll tell you.
So the tree falls in the woods and no one hears it, there was not a sound.
Well, I'm going to get into these fancy philosophical queries. The main idea is that, so therefore we now understand what the binus is. The reason why you can't steal something is because that's him. It's part of him. It's almost like if you steal something, you're really a choivel. You damage the person in that sense, So therefore, we now understand something very interesting. Okay. What is suras really? And there are 4 types. We saw that in the Parsha. Sapachas, Beheres, and so on, When a person speaks Lashon Hara, he introduces, he gives koich to the Satan. But that means that the Satan has the ability to put in you zoyamo, or increase the pollution of the Satan. But there are 4 levels of zoyamo. There are 4 klippas, as they say, of tumah. Depending on your Lashon Hara, right, which klippa was allowed to enter you, how bad was Lashon Hara, that will create a certain type of tsuras. The 4 types of tsuras correspond to the 4 klippas, or 4 levels of tumah. And when you speak Lashon Hara, you introduce one of the levels in your body. And that manifests a tsuras, which is very interesting. So therefore, what really has tsuras? It's nefesh. That's why Shlomo HaMelech says, Shema Piv L'Shonoi, somebody who watches his mouth and his tongue. Shema Mi Tzoras Nafshoi, so you read it Tzoras Nafshoi. What do you mean Nafshoi? It's gufoi. But no, the Tzoras is the nefesh. That's the zoyama, that's the klipa. You see, depending on what type of level of tumah or type of tumah entered you, and there are 4 types, right? Without getting into that, right? That will create the tzoras on what? On the guf. Because the guf is really an extension of the neshama, right? If the universe is an extension of the you are an extension of the neshama. You all broadcast, we radiate out. So therefore it comes out that the type of tumah depends on the type of Lashon Hara. You see, that's why there are 4 types of tumah, and so on, because it depends what type of zoyama entered you. But wait a minute, which is interesting. You really are what? All your possessions are really you. So therefore the tzuras hits first what? It hits the house first. But that house is really an extension of you. You see? So it comes out that the tzuras hits you, but in your outermost form, namely your house. If you keep talking Lashon Hara, it goes further into you. It's like a disease, it's on the skin, and all of a sudden you get a wound, the bacteria goes into the body, and if worse comes to worse, it goes into the organ. All it is greater and greater entry into the person. Same concept.
It's very good now, because it says also over the person's beings in his house will be made.
Yeah, well, yeah, because it's really him. Exactly, yeah. It's not an external thing. It's really you, and it's almost like you testify to yourself. Where you have to say, I admit what I did.
How's this answer the person's ko-gufo tzuras when he's talking?
Wait. So anyway, that's why it'll hit your house first. It's really you, but it's the outermost part of you. And then if you keep talking, it hit your what? It hit your clothing, and your clothing is also an extension of you. And then ultimately hit your skin. But really, what did it hit first? It hit nafshe first. The shaila is, which expansion did it hit first? So the Rosh had Rachmanis in a certain sense. He allowed the tzuras to hit the most external part of you.
Shouldn't it hit your wife first? No, because that's the most extension.
But why should she get it? She didn't speak Lashon Hara.
No, because the
That's
period.
the most extension.
No, that's
Closest extension.
It's an
She didn't
interesting
speak
thought.
Lashon Hara.
It's an interesting thought, but remember, it's a logical question. I wouldn't tell that to your wife.
So if the wife speaks Lashon Hara, the husband should get?
What?
If the wife speaks Lashon Hara,
Well,
the husband should
basically
get?
he's saying the same thing either way.
You don't punish someone if they didn't do something.
Oh, but you have to understand.
Both are chronic for each other.
But you know what the answer is? Because once the Rebbe created the concept of period, where you don't see the connection, therefore there is a concept called individuation. Period means that there's an individuation. That means what happens to one is not apparent in the other. But what you do say, but there is a truth in what you say, at some level. If one person sins here, then, if we sit here, it could be that chet on the guf of Klal Yisrael is going to damage Jews somewhere in Kazakhstan.
But what he's saying, the Gemara is saying, Avon, let's say, Avon Nedarim,
Yeah.
Mason, or Bona Mason, that
Yeah.
counts up. You see that.
Yes, you do, that's what I'm saying.
You see that.
In a certain sense, what you're saying has truth. But like I said, so in a certain sense, yes, if it's like a Siamese twin, if one Siamese twin decides to commit suicide, the other will die also. Why? Because it's one body. You can't stop the results, the outcome.
Chet in Alaska, how do you hold the Yid in San Diego liable for that?
That's a good question. But there is, in some sense, there is a relationship. Of course, obviously, what do you want from me?
You should always be going at
Where you see the classic responsibility by the Kohen Gadol. If somebody kills somebody b'shoygeg, he's got to go to Ari Mikla, city of refuge, right? But the only way he could be freed from the city of refuge is if the Kohen Gadol dies, right? So you imagine, all the minyanim in the city of refuge are praying for the death of the Kohen
So
Gadol.
the mother came. Yeah?
Yeah, so the mother used to come to the city and give out great stuff to everybody because they always mispal that the Kohen Gadol should die because their freedom depends on the death of the Kohen Gadol. Now, the question obviously is, excuse me, what do you want from the Kohen Gadol? Obviously, if their freedom depends on the death of the Kohen Gadol, then in some way the Kohen Gadol has to be responsible. Like, what do you want from me? So the question is, what's the responsibility? And the answer is, since you are the spiritual leader of Klal Yisrael, it was your job to make sure that somebody would not be negligent, right, and kill somebody. You see, so the truth is, we don't realize, but there are many levels of connections that hold us responsible in some way. You know what I'm saying? Maybe some guy, you say, some guy is in Los Angeles. So what is some Jew in Alaska sin? What do you want from the guy?
Yisrael Salanter said that if they talk Lashon Hara in the Beis Medrash and Kovna, they'll be Mechal Shabbos in Paris.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Exactly. But the question is why? So the answer is because it's really one. But still the question is, okay, but period creates certain amount of individuality. It does create individualism where it can't be obvious. Some guy talks such and his wife gets sick. It can't be obvious because there is a concept, period creates its own set of rules. Or else, everybody's sinking, we all sink together and that kind of stuff, So obviously there is separation to a certain extent. But at a certain level, in the level of Shemayim, person is held. Why? Because maybe somebody, some kiruv organization, I'm giving you a Weitazach, some kiruv organization, who does kiruv, right? And they sent the guy a letter for a donation, right? And maybe they have a kiruv office in Alaska. You see? So if this guy had given some money to that kiruv organization, that would have in some way sponsored their guy in Alaska to do more kiruv, maybe he would have reached the guy. Look, we cannot know this. These are, it takes infinite cheshbonis. But in some way, there is some type of connection. Look, there's a very important concept, which again I'll introduce, and so on. Yisun shel Ahava. The Gemara talks about suffering from love. Now, what does that mean? Yisun shel Ahava. People have Yisun because they sinned, right? You have Yisun, why do you have suffering?
It's the love that Hashem wants to give the person to take it.
Wait, no. Let's go slow. There's a concept called Yisun shel Ahava, suffering from love. Okay. The rule is that suffering that a person has out of love, he needs to accept it. And that's a kapora for other Jews. In other words, he has to be free of sin. So the Yisurim that he gets is not machape him, doesn't atone for him. It atones for Jews. An important concept, okay? Yisurim shel Ahava. You see that from the Gemara. Where there was a Amoy, Rabbi Yochanan came. Somebody was terrible Yisurim, I think it was Rabbi Loza, I recall. Whatever. And he had a lot of Yisurim. So Rabbi Yochanan came and sat down. To console him, So whatever, Rabbi Yochanan tried to console her, but ultimately Rabbi Yochanan said, listen, do you want this stuff? You want the Yisurim? So the Torah says, Lohein v'yischar. I don't want either them or the reward. Reward? What reward? He should have said, I don't want them and their kapara, which he can't say. You know? But he said, Lohein v'yischar. I don't want them or the reward. What's that mean? Because the Yisurim that he was having had nothing to do with his own sins. It had everything to do with Klal Yisrael. So this person, but in order to be in order to get Yisroel Shalava, you have to want it. That's why it's called Ava. You do it for the love of the Jews. You know, you want to take away some of the burden. See, but if a person does accept it, there's incredible reward, incomprehensible schus. Why? Because he's suffering so that this will reduce the amount of suffering of the other people. You see that many times, where a Novi will suffer for Klal Yisrael. The question is, what kind of a mechanism is that? How? What do you mean, you suffer? And this, by the way, was obviously taken over by the Christians, you know.
Yeah.
This concept, you know, where a person can suffer for others and atone for others, was clearly taken over by what he called Paul. And he just went home with this, you know, he went shopping with this kind of stuff, you know. And he just created a whole religion based on that. He died for the sins, whatever. I get into that nonsense. But the essential idea is that concept is a true concept. That a person can suffer for somebody else. Like I said, see the Gemara. But you had people suffer. It's called, you know, for other people. But you can only do it if you are devoid of sin, and therefore you don't need a kapara, and you have to want to accept it. I mean, Gemara has, I forgot, Rabbi Loza, I think, in one Rabbi Sia, where he was a very heavy guy, and he suffered terribly. So his wife didn't know what to do. So one day she's right outside, and all of a sudden she hears him saying, you know, Bo, come upon me, Yisun Shel Ava. He was actually, and that's why he was sick. Because he wanted to suffer for Klal Yisrael, right? And as a result of that, so she came in and says, Leon, until now I thought it was for your Chatam. You know, it's for Klal Yisrael, don't do this. You know, I mean, how it affected their marriage or whatever, and so on. These people have a certain name. They're called Sivli Chiloim. They suffer, or they bear the suffering, Chilom, of diseases, not for themselves, but for Klal Yisrael. They have a specific name, and in every door, there are tzaddikim, because you have to be a tzaddik to be eligible for this, you know. It was basically you have no sins, or very few sins, whatever. They're called the Sivli Chiloim. And there are many people who are Sivli Chiloim that you never suspect. Among the greatest of all those people who atone for other people, okay, is Moshe Rabbeinu. He's one of the greatest of the Sivli Chiloim. No, it's not that he was sick. Where is he buried? Outside Eretz Yisrael. The reason why he's buried outside Eretz Yisrael is because that's his Yisurin. He has Yisurin, his Neshama has Yisurin, that he's not buried in Eretz Yisrael, that he was denied entry. Why? Because his suffering that he goes through, the fact that he couldn't go to hell, is a tremendous kapor for Klal Yisrael. Yeah, that's the true leader, you know. He's among the greatest of the Sivli Chiloim. Or through the generations, every generation has people who suffer for Klal Yisrael. And the reward is incredible. Among the greatest, probably the greatest one of all, the greatest Sivli Chila. You know what that is? There's a beautiful whole bunch of midrashim. If you look at Yalkut Shemaini, I think it's in 499 or 500, in Shayo, talks about the greatest of all. That it was so great that all the Nevi'im came up to him and said, we don't compare to your suffering. Who? No. Sheikh Ben Yosef. He's the greatest of the Sivli Chiloim. And I'll just tell you the famous, very incredible medrash where the Roshim comes over to Sheikh Ben Yosef and says, listen, L'asad Lavoi, Klal Yisrael has to die. It's Leah. You know, that's what Roshim says. Because all the suffering that they did is not sufficient to be mechaber them. So, he tells that Mashiach says to the Baruch no, can't be. So Mashiach ben Yosef says, I will accept upon me, I mean, this is incredible, every single pain that any Jew needs from the time of the beginning of creation, Avraham Avinu, whatever, I will accept upon myself. So Baruch says, yes, okay. So he became a Sefer Chuleh of the entire Klal Yisrael for all time, whatever they needed as a boost, you know. So Baruch said, okay, yeah, you want, okay, I'll do it, I'll do it.
How can you survive?
Wait, so there's the Medrash, we had a Medrash. The Medrash says, so Moshe took a yoke of iron, basel, oil basel, and he put it on the neck of the Mashiach ben Yosef. That symbolizes all the, you know, so it was so heavy that the Mashiach ben Yosef bent down, he just like, you know, and he screamed out, he says, I can't take this. I mean, you know, I didn't realize, isn't there a 3-day contract that you can be chayz on a contract, right? So this probably was within the 3 days, you know? So Baruch said, you said you would. And without that, Klal Yisrael couldn't survive. Interesting. So the Baruch said, listen, I also will go suffer, whatever that means, kaviyachol, I will go into Golus. And so the Mashiach ben Yosef said, okay, Dayor, it is sufficient that the master and his servant will suffer both for Klal Yisrael. Interesting, whatever, you know. But from that, and then the Midrash goes on and so on. You know, whatever it means and so on. And then what he basically took up as the slack. The slack means whatever Klal Yisrael couldn't suffer because it's beyond human ability to have that suffering, he took on himself. And then, and so on. And that's how they survive and so on, you know. Anyway, so as the Medrash goes on, finally the Medrash talks about the fact that Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov all went up to the Mashiach ben Ephraim, and they said to him, you are greater than us, because you took on the suffering of Klal Yisrael, and we didn't, you know. And that's why Mashiach ben Yosef is so incredibly great. In fact, when you think about it, why was Yosef taken to Mitzrayim? Same concept. You know, I mean, he was in prison for 13 years. And prison in Egypt wasn't the hotel. Not like what they have now, you know. You know, they have all kinds of goodies and TV and all that kind of stuff, you know. You went to prison in Egypt, that was the worst possible thing you could do. And so, you know, that's like being in solitary confinement, you know. Of course the Moshe was with him and he protected him and all that, you know, and made sure that Yosef would survive and all that. But that's where Yosef HaTzadik, he really accepted the burden of Klal Yisrael, whatever, to go into the Klippa and whatever and so on, and to suffer. That's what he did. It's basically what it is.
Yaakov
And so on.
didn't do this?
Yes, that's why Shomas Adava, and so on. That's a whole shiur itself. But in any case, so therefore, what I'm getting at is that one of the repercussions of what I said is that we're really one goof, is that one person can suffer and you get an atonement. All of these ideas, you know, they all come with the actors of Klal Yisrael and so on and so forth. You know, all of these ideas, and even in the physical universe, you see the concept of that everything knows about everything else and so on.
So why is Christianity wrong?
Wait, why is it wrong?
I mean, what that idea,
They're not wrong with the idea.
the idea is right.
Yeah, but they're wrong in the guy. You know? They're wrong in the guy. Who is this guy? You know, here's where it goes. You know what a converse is? It's true that a tzaddik, in other words, the Messiah will suffer. Statement one. But is the converse true? That he who suffers is the Messiah? No. You know, they think because Yeshu suffered, whatever, you know, therefore that means he's the Mashiach. It's nonsense. That qualifies all of us to be Mashiach. Right? And maybe we are, who knows, you know. You know, and I know why guys come walking on the street saying I'm the Messiah, you know. But the main idea is that's why, because he was killed on the cross or whatever, crucified and all that, doesn't make him a Mashiach. Rome crucified who knows how many people. It's incredible how many of the people they crucified. I mean, it shows what Rome was and so on, you know. But, so, yeah, I mean, somebody is a tzaddik and so on and so forth, you know, he can atone for somebody else, but the fact that you atone more doesn't make you or Messiah. It doesn't make you Mashiach and so on, you know. But in any case, but again, how is it possible? Because reality, we don't understand reality really. The truth is, what reality is an achdus. It's interesting that there's only two things that exist outside of Baruch Hashem, the Shekhinah and the Neshama. And everything is an expansion of that. And what the Baruch Hashem did is we don't see it. That's the second day. V'yimavdu b'mayim l'moyim. Remember, first day is everything was filled with water, then the Baruch Hashem separated it all, you know? So what he did is he separated, he created the concept of purity. So we don't see that. So therefore, ownership is not a legal state really, it's an ontological state that follows the laws of purity. That means you can sell it, whatever, you know, just like, and so on. But really, ownership is an ontological state. And that's why by Negoim, you know, by Negoim, it's really Tzoras Nafshoi, because that's the whole concept, that type of Zoyma creates the Tzoras. But the Tzoras starts on you, but the outermost form of you, so to speak, which is your house, and so on and so forth. And that's why we can masak in the Bria, because it's really us. It's like, you know, eating nutritiously, then my arm gets, you know, so that's how we do it, and so on. In any case, that's a very fundamental, mystical, profound idea of the concept of who we really are, and so on. You know, and so on. So, in many ways, the physical body is the immediate extension or expansion of the soul. And then it goes further out and out and out and so on. And then it radiates throughout the universe. So it comes out that the entire universe is really all part of Klal Yisrael. That's why when there's going to be a zikuch of Klal Yisrael, the whole Bria has a zikuch. Because it's really whatever the aspects are and so on, you see. And that's why, you know, what's interesting is the concept of that there are 10 mekoimos, 10 arotzos, 10 lands and so on, you know. Each one has a certain kedusha, you know. But in many ways, the concept of land itself is an extension of us, you know. So therefore, the Kodesh HaKadoshim really is the immediate extension of Klal Yisrael. You know, look at it that way. And as it gets further and further away from us, has less kedusha. But ultimately speaking, the universe is really us, you know, and so on. And that's a very important yesod. So this explains, you know, the parsha of Tzoras, and so on and so forth.
Which 10 aratzos are you referring to? I'm sorry.
No, there are 10, the Mishnah in Olas. That's Kedushas Haim. And it enumerates this Kodesh HaKadoshim. Then there's between the Kodesh, and then there's before the Kosel, in the Chotzer, in the Chayil, the Azor, and so on. Finally, the outside Chutz, then is Yerushalayim, outside Yerushalayim, and so on. Finally, the last one, of course, is Chutla, and so on. You know, but really, what do you mean, as a Kedushas Him? Because ultimately, all things extend from the Neshama. That's why the Neshama is the greatest thing the Moshe ever created. So when Ben Azai says, Bishvili Nivra Olam, for me the world was created, you know, what he's really saying is that I am the world. You know, the world was created because of me, and the world is me. Olam Cotton and so on. That's why it's Olam Cotton. It gives a new meaning to the concept of Olam Cotton and so on. You know, but in any case, you know. Anyway, any questions?
Yeah, this is all very important. So how is it compatible with the message of that to try to negate the physicality in our lives for spiritual benefit?
Well, what that would mean ultimately is to negate the physicality. Means don't get trapped in the fact that it's you, but it's external. Because you are really, you want to get closer to your real essential self, and that's the Shama. Yeah. Okay. That's interesting.
Thank you very much.
Okay. It gives you a handle on certain really esoteric and mystical and profound ideas and so on. But like I say, it answers a lot of questions.
Makes sense of the portion,
Yeah. Sure. Exactly. So. Also why there are 4 Saras, 4 types, because that's what you really introduce. So that's really what it's all about. So, okay. Next week.
Is there any representation to those 4 type of tzaras in the 4 types of lashon hara? Is there like 4 types of lashon hara that connect to those 4 types of tzaras?
Well, there are several types of lashon hara. I mean, there's lashon hara, where you can degrade a person. Then there's lashon hara where you can damage a person. Then there's v'chilus, where you can, v'chilus is where you inform on somebody. And the 4th type, it's called Motzi Shemra. It's lashon hara with Motzi Shemra. What you're saying, degrading a person, is not even true. So in a certain sense, you have 4 different types. You can degrade somebody, you can damage somebody by your speech, You can create an enormous amount of hatred by your speech, And the whole thing could be a lie. So you have 4 types.
Nas Devarim, to hurt.
Who?
Nas Devarim.
Nas Devarim is not lashon hara.
No?
No. No, it means through your words, you pain somebody. You cause pain by speaking and so on.
This opens up a whole new thing that's fine for another time, but why is it if someone's totally covered in saras, they're not tummy? It's like it's partial. What's behind that?
As long as a person isn't completely diseased, he can get a cure. But once a person is completely diseased, there's no cure.
So it's just a default that the...
It's like, there's nothing to redeem him.
No, but the tumor should not be there. The tumor's not there. Tumor should be there.
There's no ticking. If you can't have a ticking, you can't have a...
Tumor,
Hashem is only sending something.
if you could have kedusha, you can have tumah. But what happens if you can't even have kedusha? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, the only living person that can become tameh is a Jew, right? A goy is not tameh if he's alive. Why? Because there's no kedusha. Because kedusha is the entry. It could be spirituality, but kedusha is the result of what? Of the tikkun process. You see. So once you all tameh, then there's no more kedusha. If there's no more kedusha, there's no more tumah. In that sense.
So Metzora that was 100% couldn't do tshuva and come back? Yeah.
Well, that's a different story. I'm sure he could, but in his present state, it was really very bad. Okay,
Thank
gentlemen.
you so much.
Thank you very much.
Interesting. If a guy touches you, your hands are still considered tar?
You're not tumah.
Davening.
No, that's...
Comes
So there's
down.
tumah d'Rabbanan. Yes.
D'Rabbanan.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. D'Rabbanan said you tummy. Yeah, of course. In the Manatera, a guy who's alive is not tummy. If he dies, he's a tummy mace. He is tummy.
But even that's not as strong as a regular use.
No, it's
Kohen,
a voice.
Kohen.
No, it is very strong.
It's very strong, but it's
Not
not...
only is not tummy be oil.
Right.
It means if you bend over him, you're not. It means the tumor in the guy doesn't protrude from his body like a beam. So therefore, if you bend over him, you're not tummy. You know what I'm saying? He's not a tummy oil, but he has the level of tumor, the highest level of tumor, which is an aviyah voice. Why? Because he has a nefesh. He has a nefesh. And when a person dies, that leaves, and what goes? Right? Nature abhors a vacuum, right? If a nefesh leaves, what fills its place? Tumah. That's what happens, So since he has a spiritual entity called the nefesh, he can become an aviyah voice. The only thing that doesn't project, and so on. Anyway.
Thank you so much.
Bringing it next week.